Hello and welcome to Unacademy IAS English, a one-stop destination for the English medium civil services aspirants. A very good morning and welcome to the daily Hindu news analysis. So let's begin today's discussion by first looking at the topics that we are going to discuss. From the Delhi edition of the Hindu, I have chosen a total of 7 articles that are relevant for the exam. We have 4 articles which require a detailed analysis both from a prelims and mains point of view, and we have 3 small articles that are relevant for the prelims exam. So let's cover these topics comprehensively so that you don't have to go back and read the newspaper again. If you guys are liking our initiatives, do let us know through your comments. Don't forget to press the like button and do subscribe to our channel. And also, you can join my Telegram channel. I have shared the link in the description, or you can scan the QR code. I will be sharing some updates, some notes as well. So do join the Telegram channel as well. Let's start with the first topic for today. On the front page of the Delhi edition, we have this important article related to Indian polity. The Supreme Court has agreed to admit a batch of petitions to look at the role of the governor when it comes to approving bills that are tabled in state legislative assemblies. Recently, you might have read that in several states, especially opposition-ruled states, there has been a tug-of-war between the state government and the office of the governor. For example, if you look at states like Kerala, Tamil Nadu, West Bengal, in these states, which are ruled by the opposition parties, there is an allegation that the office of the governor has been misused by the centre. That the governor keeps interfering with the executive and legislative domain of the state, which essentially undermines federalism. So the government of Kerala had approached the Supreme Court with regard to some of the bills that had been reserved by the governor for the consideration of the president. The Kerala government has argued that this repeated interference by the governor, it erodes the authority of the state legislative assembly and it is unconstitutional and undermines federalism. So this petition by the Kerala government has now been accepted by the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court is going to look into this issue. In a separate petition, West Bengal also had approached the Supreme Court regarding a similar issue. So that is what we need to discuss under this article. Let's look at this topic in slight detail and understand why this issue arises between the office of the governor and the state governments. See, if you look at the Indian Constitution, it is clearly a federal setup. It provides for a federal structure that clearly carves out a jurisdiction for the center and the states. The states in particular, they operate in their own domain, which is guaranteed through the Constitution, and in many ways the states are independent of the center. But every now and then we have seen allegations of the center interfering with the affairs of the state, especially when it comes to the functioning of the state executive and the state legislature. And it's often alleged that the office of the governor is misused for this purpose. That's one reason why governor is often referred to as the agent of the center. It's often seen that the governor acts as a political agent of the center, when that should not be the case. The governor, as the head of the state executive, is supposed to be politically neutral, but since the center appoints the governor, it's often seen that the governor functions as a political agent of the center, interfering with the jurisdiction of the state. Now, be it with regard to formation of state governments, especially when there is a hung assembly, or be it issues related to anti-defection, and also other issues related to passage of bills in the state assembly and other executive decisions. In all these areas, governors have often interfered with state governments, especially when the states are ruled by the opposition. Now, this is not just the case with the current government at the center. This has been the case historically as well. Even in the past, successive central governments, the ruling parties at the center, have often been accused of misusing the office of the governor to interfere with opposition-ruled states. So this is seen as a subversion of federalism, which is a basic structure of the Indian Constitution. Now, yesterday, we spoke about the powers of the center and the state. We were discussing about the 7th schedule, and we spoke about the union list, the state list, and the concurrent list. However, yesterday, while talking about this topic, I made a factual error. I was about to mention Article 246 that deals with the union, state and concurrent list, but I accidentally wrote Article 249. So apologies for that error. Please make a correction. So Article 246 of our Constitution, read along with the 7th schedule, divides the jurisdiction between the union and the states. So there are certain subjects which are exclusively under the domain of the center, which means only the parliament has exclusive powers to make laws on these subjects. No other authority or institution can interfere with the powers of the parliament to make laws on subjects which are enlisted under the union list. Similarly, those subjects which are placed under the state list, this is what we were discussing yesterday with regard to taxation powers of states when it comes to mineral rich lands. We spoke about entry number 49 and 50. So those subjects listed under state list, which are enumerated here, the state assembly will have exclusive powers to make laws. The center cannot interfere unless and until there are few violations of the Constitution, unless and until it is as mandated by the Constitution. So in that regard, the domain of the states is well protected. There are few subjects which are of concern to both the central government and the states, which are placed under the concurrent list. So on subjects which are under the concurrent list, both the center and states have law-making powers. Parliament and as well as the state assemblies can make laws on subjects listed under concurrent list. But in case of a conflict between the central law and the state law, obviously the central law will prevail. The central law will prevail in order to ensure that there is uniformity. And any other subject which is outside of these lists, all the residuary powers, they lie with the center as well. The residuary powers also rest with the center. So as far as the state list is concerned, the subjects listed under the state list are concerned, states do have a degree of autonomy here. They can pass the laws they want. The state assembly can bring out the laws as per the mandate of the people, and the state government, the executive, can enforce those laws, and the center should not be interfering with these powers of the state. Now this is what defines a federal structure, right? But the allegation is that few constitutional provisions have often been misused by the governor in order to indirectly allow the center to play a role in the passage of bills in the state assembly. Now let's understand, how does this happen? What are the constitutional provisions that are related to passage of bills in the state assembly, and what are the powers of the governor with regard to passage of bills? If you look at Article 200 of the Indian Constitution, it deals with the power of the governor to provide assent to a bill that has been enacted by the state legislative assembly. So once a bill has been passed by the state legislative assembly, the governor has few options. The governor can either grant assent, and essentially the bill becomes a law, it comes into force later, or the governor can withhold assent, and there is no definite time period which has been mentioned here. So essentially the governor can sit on the bill which has been passed by the state assembly, and if there is a bicameral legislature by both the houses, and the governor, instead of giving the signature, can withhold the assent and sit on the bill for an indefinite period. So this sometimes could be misused by the governor, possibly leading to a log jam between the state and the office of the governor. This in a way erodes the lawmaking powers of an elected assembly and erodes the essential power of an elected state government. The governor can even reserve the bill for the consideration of the president under certain circumstances. If, let's say, a bill passed by the state assembly is in contradiction to the constitution, if it appears that it is blatantly unconstitutional, or if the bill brought out by the State Assembly, if it is directly in conflict with a central law passed by the Parliament. So on certain grounds, the governor can reserve the bill for the consideration of the President of India, and based on that, Article 201 will come into effect. But otherwise, the governor can return the bill as well. If, let's say, the governor is feeling that in the bill there are certain controversial provisions which is not in line with our constitutional provisions, then the governor can return the bill as well, asking the House to reconsider the bill, suggesting that the House should include amendments to amend this proposed law to make it suitable in the context of the Indian Constitution. So these are the options available to the governor: either provide the assent, withhold the assent, sit on it for an indefinite period, or return the bill back to the House, asking the House to reconsider it, or reserve the bill for the consideration of the President. And according to Article 201, the President here would be guided by the aid and advice of the central government. This is, of course, not a discretionary power of the President. When a bill is reserved by the governor for the President of India will be bound by the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers. Is that clear? As per Article 74 of the Indian Constitution, the President of India would be bound by the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers. So the President can grant assent to the bill or withhold assent as per Article 201. The President can even direct the governor to return the bill back to the House, asking the House to reconsider the bill. So these are the options available for the President. But if the governor withholds the assent for an indefinite period, for months together, then reserves the bill for the consideration of the President, and then President will sit on it for several months, and the President will act according to the aid and advice of Council of Ministers, then this essentially erodes the lawmaking powers of the State Assembly, of an elected State Assembly. So this in many ways erodes the confidence of the people in an elected democracy. It erodes the federal structure of the Constitution, because the centre is indirectly giving itself a role to directly interfere with the lawmaking powers of the State Assembly, even on subjects enumerated under the state list. The centre, we learnt earlier, that cannot interfere with the lawmaking powers of the state with regard to subjects under the state list. But through Article 200 and 201, if, let's assume that the ruling party at the centre wants to meddle with opposition ruled states, or forget the political issue, let's say the centre and state are at conflict over a certain issue. Even if it's a subject under the state list, the centre can work through the office of the governor, get the bill reserved for the consideration of the President, and essentially the central government will decide whether assent will be granted to the bill, or will the President sit on the decision, or will the President ask the House to reconsider the bill. So while this is a system of checks and balance that has been built into our Constitution by our Constitution framers, quite often the office of the governor comes under this controversy that the office is getting misused by the centre to interfere with the lawmaking powers of elected state governments. So this has been a legitimate concern of several state governments, not just now, but in the past as well. So the Supreme Court has agreed to admit this petition by Kerala government. There is a similar petition from West Bengal as well. And we have seen these issues coming up in Tamil Nadu, Telangana, previously in Odisha as well. Essentially, wherever opposition ruled state governments were present, in all these states such issues have repeatedly come up. So now what is the solution for this? Do we have any committees which have looked into this issue? Are there any recommendations? The answer is yes. We have had two important committees that have reviewed center-state relations. As part of this mandate, they have reviewed the office of the governor and the functioning of the governor. They have looked into the allegation as well that the governor is acting as an agent of the center. So with regard to the governor's office, the Sarkaria Commission of the 1980s and the Punchi Commission, both of them have provided certain recommendations, and we are going to take a look at the recommendations related to the passage of bills and the governor's assent. If you look at Sarkaria Commission, which submitted its report in 1988, by 1988 it submitted the report, and Sarkaria Commission says that only in rare cases of unconstitutionality should the governor exercise the discretionary power to withhold assent or reserve the bill for the consideration of the president. Which means, as a norm, the governor should grant assent or at least return the bill for reconsideration. Because governor also is bound by the aid and advice of the State Council of Ministers. That again is a constitutional provision. So governor doesn't really have a discretionary power according to Sarkaria Commission when it comes to reserving every other bill. If, let's say, the bill brought out by the State Assembly is blatantly unconstitutional, in such a rare case, yes, governor should reserve the bill for the consideration of the president. That is why this system of checks and balances have been added into the constitution, to ensure that states don't bring out laws which are in contravention to the Indian constitution. But governor should not be exercising this power during regular bills as well. For example, if you look at Kerala, right, there were bills related to cooperative societies, lokayuktas, university regulation. These are clearly subjects of the state government. So the governor reserving those bills and keeping it for the consideration of the president, it's simply a way to allow the center to interfere on these sensitive issues. Because some of these issues have a political dimension to it, and by reserving the bill, the governor is essentially allowing the center to interfere with the state administration. So Sarkaria Commission recommended that there should be a norm that governors will not reserve the bill for the president unless and until it's a rare case of unconstitutionality. Governors must discharge the functions under Article 200 according to the aid and advice of the State Council of Ministers, because governor is bound by the aid and advice of the elected government, by the cabinet. And Sarkaria Commission also recommended a time period for the president when such bills are reserved for his consideration. The president should decide within a maximum period of 6 months. There should not be an indefinite delay, which essentially cripples the legislative process in the State Assembly. If you look at the Punchi Commission also had a similar suggestion. The Punchi Commission that submitted its report in 2010, it recommended that the governor should take a decision with respect to bills passed by the State Assembly within a period of 6 months. A definite time period was recommended by Punchi Commission as well. This was for the governor. After the State Assembly has passed a bill, or if, let's say, there are two houses, there is an upper and lower house, and both houses have enacted a bill, the governor should decide with regard to his assent within 6 months. Either grant the assent or return the bill or send it to the president for his consideration. You can't sit on it for months together, which essentially delays the lawmaking process. So these recommendations, unfortunately, have not been implemented till date. In fact, Sarkaria Commission had even recommended that if the president is withholding assent, finally, the reasons should be communicated to the House. This is never done. If, let's say, governor is reserving the bill for the consideration of the president, and if president decides to withhold the assent, which essentially means the State Assembly can't go ahead with the lawmaking process. In these cases, the reasons are not explained. They are not publicly given to the State Assembly. So Sarkaria Commission said, if the governor is reserving a bill, if the president is withholding assent, then give those reasons. Give the reasons to the State Assembly so that there is more transparency in the process. So this is what we learn from this important topic, and I would like to give you this practice question to help improve your mains answer writing skills. Governors have subverted federalism by reserving regular bills for the consideration of the president. Critically examine. So use the points that we have discussed, structure that into a good answer, and post the answer in the comment section below. Since it's a very straightforward topic, I'll not be discussing the model answer. I have given the explanation, given you the right points. You just have to collect that and place that in the right structure and create a good answer for this question. So let's see how many of you can provide a good answer, and I'll look at the comments later. Now let's take up the next article from page number 6. We have a column related to a regional grouping called the BIMSTEC. I'm sure all of you would have heard about the BIMSTEC, Bay of Bengal Initiative for Multi-Sectoral, Technical and Economic Cooperation. BIMSTEC is one of the most important regional groupings, especially since the group was revived in 2016 by India. See, the establishment of BIMSTEC goes back to 1990s. But for 2 decades, BIMSTEC was a very minor organization which did not get the recognition it deserved. But post 2016, after India started sidelining the SAARC, because in 2016 Pakistan sponsored the Uri attacks against India, which led India to boycott the SAARC summit. Because SAARC has been the primary regional grouping for South Asia, that includes the 8 South Asian countries, including India and Pakistan. But at SAARC, Pakistan has always been a problematic member, which has always derailed Indian initiatives. Whatever initiatives India proposes, be it regional connectivity or scientific technological cooperation, Pakistan always disrupts those initiatives, and more importantly, Pakistan has destabilized South Asia by sponsoring terrorism. So following the Uri attacks of 2016, India boycotted the SAARC summit, and we started sidelining SAARC in order to isolate Pakistan. This was even called as the SAARC minus Pakistan strategy of India. So by ignoring Pakistan and by sidelining SAARC, India revived another sub-regional group called BIMSTEC in the place of SAARC. So BIMSTEC started getting more prominence, and the members of BIMSTEC also have been more proactive in the last 6 to 8 years. So let's understand what is BIMSTEC. Why is this grouping so important? So as the name itself tells you, this is a grouping focused on the Bay of Bengal region. Right? BIMSTEC stands for Bay of Bengal Initiative for Multi-Sectoral, Technical and Economic Cooperation. So the region of focus is Bay of Bengal, and it's a multi-sectoral organization, meaning it has few identified sectors under which the member countries cooperate with each other. And the priority is technical and economic cooperation in certain identified sectors. So this organization was established in the year 1997 through the Bangkok Declaration. A few countries from South Asia and few countries from Southeast Asia came together to establish this organization. So in many ways, BIMSTEC is like a bridge that connects South Asia with Southeast Asia. It's a direct link between South Asia and Southeast Asia. So India was definitely one of the founding members of BIMSTEC, and it includes major powers of the Bay of Bengal, the littorals or the rim countries of Bay of Bengal, such as Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Myanmar, Thailand, etc. Now, can you find out which was the last member to join BIMSTEC? This is a small assignment for you. Find out which was the country that joined BIMSTEC last. Mention that in the comment section below. Please find this out. Which was the country that was the last member of BIMSTEC, and please mention that in the comment section. So these countries of South Asia, Southeast Asia, including Nepal and Bhutan, they are part of this important regional grouping to ensure that they establish regional connectivity by leveraging the Bay of Bengal. So BIMSTEC becomes very crucial as far as the Indo-Pacific region is concerned, because Bay of Bengal is at the very center of the Indo-Pacific, at the very heart of the Indo-Pacific, and this grouping provides a leadership role for India in the region, in the South Asia, Southeast Asia region. So by pursuing this policy with BIMSTEC, it fulfills India's vision with regard to neighborhood first policy, the Act East policy of India, and also the Sagar Doctrine of India. Under Sagar Doctrine, launched by in the region, that is in the Indo-Pacific region. Through neighborhood first policy, the Modi government has prioritized its relations with the neighboring countries, the immediate neighbors of India. And through Act East policy, which is an upgraded version of the Look East policy, we are paying renewed attention to Southeast and East Asian countries. So by pursuing closer ties with BIMSTEC and by reviving the BIMSTEC, India has fulfilled the objectives of all these three policies, the foreign policy doctrines of India. So BIMSTEC today has emerged as a major regional group, and a couple of years ago in 2022, during the Colombo Virtual Summit of BIMSTEC, the BIMSTEC countries adopted the BIMSTEC Charter, which is the constitution of BIMSTEC. 2 years ago in 2022, the BIMSTEC Charter was adopted. This was a very big development which gives a formal structure to the organization. It defines the priorities of the organization and as well as the processes that will be followed. So during the Colombo Summit, the 7 sectors of cooperation were finalized. Previously, BIMSTEC had 14 different sectors, which was very chaotic. Now that has been simplified with 7 sectors of cooperation, and each member provides leadership to one sector. There are 7 members in total. So 7 sectors have been identified. You can see that over here in the table. And each member country provides leadership to each of the sector. It chairs each of the sector. Like for example, Bangladesh is the chair for trade, investment and development. India is the chair for security sector that includes counter-terrorism, tackling organized crime, and even disaster management and energy security. So please make a note of this. The 7 members, they head one sector each, and these 7 sectors were identified during the Colombo Summit. So during Colombo Summit, BIMSTEC countries reiterated that regional connectivity is their priority. They have even adopted a master plan for connectivity. A master plan for connectivity has been adopted, and several projects are being taken up and funded through Asian Development Bank to establish road, rail and air connectivity between Southeast Asia and South Asia. So as part of the regional connectivity initiatives, BIMSTEC is looking at enhanced maritime connectivity as well. That's why the topic is in news. Because recently India hosted the second meeting of the foreign ministers. So BIMSTEC foreign ministers, they held a retreat just a few days ago. This was the second time that BIMSTEC foreign ministers were holding such a retreat. So during the retreat, many proposals are brought up by the members, which will be finally considered during the summit of the leaders. When the BIMSTEC summit happens, it is scheduled for September 2024. So when the prime ministers and the presidents of these member countries meet, these proposals brought up by the foreign ministers retreat will be considered, and some of them will turn into agreements. So during the foreign ministers retreat hosted by India, one important issue that was discussed, that was proposed by India, was a BIMSTEC agreement on maritime transport cooperation. Now this is a priority for India. This will truly leverage the Bay of Bengal to connect South Asia and Southeast Asia and thus improve regional connectivity. This will improve trade. It will create more opportunities for tourism as well. So overall, it will drive economic development in the region. So apart from this, the BIMSTEC members who held the retreat meeting of the foreign ministers, they have proposed many other ideas and initiatives. For example, India has promoted an initiative on healthcare for cancer patients and those suffering from chronic diseases. India is opening up itself as a medical tourism destination, and it is providing many facilities under BIMSTEC initiative to attract the patients from across BIMSTEC countries to India. And Sri Lanka, Myanmar, they've all brought up their own proposals. Myanmar, which is affected by organized crime, especially cyber scandals and online scams, it is requesting BIMSTEC for help to crack down on these criminal activities. India has brought up the instability in Myanmar and how the crime which is prevalent in Myanmar and in the Golden Triangle can spread to India and other countries around Bay of Bengal. So all the important issues from counter-terrorism, security, countering organized crime to even disaster management has been discussed during the foreign ministers retreat. So that is why the writers feel that BIMSTEC has a great future. It has great potential to transform the region, and the upcoming summit will hold the key, because after the BIMSTEC charter was adopted, this will be the next important summit where some new agreements might be signed. And also remember, under BIMSTEC, a disaster management exercise is also conducted under the leadership of India. So now take up a practice question. BIMSTEC holds great promise for India's regional diplomatic interests. Evaluate. Again, it's a simple, straightforward question. You can expect such questions in GS paper 2. So I would like to see you guys writing an answer for this question using the points that we have discussed in the last few minutes. Now let's take up the next column from page number 6 again, that deals with data privacy of children. This column talks about data privacy and data protection for children, for school-going children, essentially. So let's explore this article in detail. Let's talk about the issues being brought up by the article. See, if you look at India's education system, the schooling system, we have lakhs of schools in our country, and now we have online education platforms, including the edtech companies. So be it the schools or be it the edtech platforms or any other regular online platform, they're all collecting a lot of data which is related to school-going children. It could be their personal identity, right? It could be their academic records. So these pieces of information which is being collected by schools, by edtech companies, online coaching institutions, etc. This is very sensitive data. See, any personal data, it is part of your privacy. Not everyone can have access to your personal data. And when it comes to children's data, it becomes even more sensitive, because minor children might be targeted and exploited and abused by cyber criminals if this data falls into the wrong hands. So greater care has to be taken by the schooling system, by the government, by the edtech companies, by the online platforms to secure the sensitive personal data of school-going children. So that is the focus of this article. Now in India, we have two major initiatives of the Ministry of Education, which has been collecting enormous amount of digital data on our school-going children. You might have heard about the UDI SE Plus initiative launched in 2018, the Unified District Information for School Education. So under this system, at the district level, lot of information and data is being collected by the Ministry of Education in order to help in decision making and policy making. Data such as the school infrastructure that is present at the district level, the number of schools, the toilets, the computers, the internet connection that is available. Data regarding the teachers, the number of teachers, their qualification, the student enrollment ratio, the academic performance of students. So all such data which can help the Ministry of Education to formulate better policies are being collected at the district level under UDI SE Plus platform. So this is one set of sensitive digital data which is being harnessed by the ministry to map the trends in education at the district level. So this will inadvertently include the data of individual children as well. And on the other hand, under the National Education Policy, under NEP 2020, the government has launched an initiative called APAR, Automated Permanent Academic Account Registry Identification. This is like a unique identification for every school-going student. It's like your Aadhaar or the Universal Health ID, which has been created in the health industry. A unique ID is assigned to every patient, so all the patient records can be tracked, can be made available on a single platform. Similarly, students are being assigned a single unique identifier which can help in collecting all the data connected to that student, be it the academic record, the attendance of the student, the number of schools that the student has switched, So all such data which is personal to that student, to that minor child, is collected under the APAR system, and now the Ministry of Education is working on linking the two databases. There's a proposal from the Ministry of Education to connect or interlink the two data systems so that it can help in policy making. It can help in understanding the trends in education, how students are performing, what are the patterns that are emerging at the district level, and help in making better decisions and better policies. So from an administrative point of view, this is a great initiative. There are many advantages because data-driven governance will definitely provide for more accuracy, more efficiency, and it will help in targeting the right groups, right? But however, these databases are very vulnerable. They could be easily misused, or the right to privacy of the child could be violated. These academic records and the education records collected under these two systems, they are stored on DigiLocker, and sometimes governments are entering into agreements with edtech companies and online platforms, and they are sharing the student data as well with the private companies. So this raises concern about the right to privacy of minor children, because children will be more vulnerable if their data is exposed and if it falls into the wrong hands. So that is the concern being highlighted by the article. See, last year India enacted the Digital Personal Data Protection Act. After many years of to and fro, finally the Indian Parliament brought out a personal data protection law, and it mandates the data fiduciaries, which includes government institutions and private entities which collect and handle data, to ensure that right to privacy of citizens is protected. Because I hope you know that right to privacy today is a fundamental right. It has been recognized by the Supreme Court as a fundamental right under Article 21 in the landmark K.S. Puttaswamy case. In the K.S. Puttaswamy judgment, the Supreme Court ruled that right to privacy is part of your fundamental right under Article 21. So which means the state has an obligation to protect your fundamental right. So with regard to the data regarding our minor children, school-going children, which is being collected under the APAR system and the UDI SE Plus platform, and the proposed interlinking of these databases, there are concerns whether the data protection measures will be taken up, not just by the government, but also by the private companies, especially the edtech companies. Because see, the Ministry of Education had formulated a data sharing policy for school education before the Personal Data Protection Act was enacted. In 2020, 4 years ago, Ministry of Education came out with a data protection policy mandating government institutions and private companies how they should handle data related to school education, because it can contain sensitive personal data of minor children. This, of course, did not include the new updates which has been done through the Personal Data Protection Act, which was passed only last year. So that is why the writer of the column is expressing concern about the right to privacy of our school-going children. Whether the government will it be able to protect the right to privacy of minor children as a fundamental right, given the fact that the data of minor children is all the more sensitive. Is that clear? Now this is where we need to look at the K.S. Puttaswamy judgment. Because in this landmark case, the Supreme Court established a threefold test based on which right to privacy of the individual can be violated by the state. There are three grounds based on which the center or the government, the state, can breach your right to privacy. Your right to privacy is, of course, not supreme. It's not an absolute right. There will be restrictions, reasonable restrictions. So to check whether right to privacy is applicable or not in certain cases, the Supreme Court brought out a threefold test under the K.S. Puttaswamy case. Because sometimes data is essential for administrative reasons, for decision making, policy making. So you can't protect all data, keep all the data away without giving access to the required stakeholders. Because some data is essential in a data-driven world. Data will help you make better decisions. So in such cases, you can't go and claim that my right to privacy has been violated. So to test on what grounds right to privacy is not a consideration, where data can be used for certain administrative purposes, the Supreme Court laid down a threefold test. What are these three conditions? One, there should be a legitimate state interest in restricting the right to privacy of an individual. Now, if the state is looking to restrict your right to privacy for some reason, there has to be a legitimate state interest behind it. Now, for example, let's say you're a salaried professional, you're paying taxes to the government. Now, you can't say that your IT records, your bank account details are part of your right to privacy. Obviously, IT department, concerned authorities will have access to it. So, state has a legitimate interest in restricting your right to privacy in this regard. So, this has to be established. There should be a legitimate interest of the state, administrative reason, maybe a security reason or a governance related reason to compromise your right to privacy. Next, the restriction has to be necessary and proportionate. This restriction should be necessary, it should be deemed to be necessary, meaning that is the only way in which this particular task can be carried out. Only by collecting your data can this particular task can be carried out. Like for example, without your Aadhaar and PAN number, right, the government can't provide basic services to you. It is necessary for the government to get hold of your Aadhaar and PAN number, to have your basic biometric details, from your name to your fingerprint to your iris scan, which is collected under the Aadhaar system. It is necessary for the government to identify the beneficiaries and the individuals to target the government schemes. So you have to prove the necessary requirement, and the violation of right to privacy, to whatever extent is being done, it should be proportionate to the eventual outcome. Now let's say on security grounds, intelligence agencies, they want to track a few individuals who are suspected terrorists maybe. So whatever surveillance is mounted on them and their right to privacy which eventually gets violated, it should be proportional to the threat. Now just because there is a intelligence input that there are few terrorists who have arrived in the country, the state can't mount mass surveillance on all the citizens. That is disproportionate. Whereas if it has specific intelligence regarding few individuals who might be a security risk, and if the intelligence agencies track those individuals for few days, for a limited period, then that is proportionate. So the necessary and proportionate test has to be fulfilled. And finally, this restriction should be backed by law. There should be a legal backing so that there is accountability. Eventually, the state becomes accountable to the parliament. So this threefold test has to be passed if the state has to violate your right to privacy on reasonable grounds. Is that clear? So it's very, very important in the education system to ensure that the right to privacy of our children is protected, as mandated by the Digital Personal Data Protection Act. The data sharing policy in the education system, it should be brought in line with the law. This should be made an obligation on government entities and as well as on private firms, be it private schools, be it edtech companies or online platforms. Both the public and private stakeholders who are the data fiduciaries, who collect the data, who handle and process the data, they should be placed under these obligations to ensure that the right to privacy of minor children is protected as a guaranteed fundamental right. So that is the argument being made by the writer of this column. Now let's look at the next topic. On page number 12, we have an update with regard to the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict. The European Union, which joined the United States in imposing economic sanctions against Russia, it has transferred some of the frozen assets of Russia to Ukraine to assist Ukraine in the war efforts and in its reconstruction efforts. So this is a very important update, a very important development as far as the conflict is concerned. See, when Russia attacked Ukraine a couple of years ago, it did violate the UN Charter because it threatened the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine. So as Russia broke international law and destabilized the Europe region, the Western powers led by US and European Union countries, they levied economic sanctions against Russia. They froze Russia's foreign assets as part of these sanctions. For example, the Russian central bank had a lot of foreign assets held in foreign jurisdiction. The Russian central bank was holding on to foreign reserve currencies. It held assets in central banks of other countries, in financial institutions present in other countries. So these central bank assets, including the bank accounts of Russian officials, Russian companies, whatever was present abroad, it was completely frozen by the Western countries. So now the European Union has decided to transfer the profits that has been generated through these Russian frozen assets, which amounts to around 1.5 billion euros. This has been transferred to Ukraine to fund Ukraine's war efforts. Is that clear? So Russian assets were not just frozen, now it's being transferred to Ukraine by the European Union. This is likely to instigate Russia even further. Correct? But EU and Western powers believe it's a legitimate action, as Russia is the violator in this case, and these funds will help Ukraine to access more weapons and even help in the reconstruction efforts. So that is the update that we need to note down from this article. Now we are coming towards the last section in today's newspaper. Let's look at the prelim section and talk about the small articles in today's newspaper. We have a very big development with regard to art and culture and history. On the front page, we have great news for India, for the state of Assam, because a historical landmark site has been designated as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. A new heritage site has been added from India to the UNESCO World Heritage List. This would be the 43rd heritage site from India. This would be the 43rd heritage site from India, which has been listed on UNESCO's World Heritage List. Is that clear? So this site is essentially the royal burial mounds belonging to the Ahom kingdom, the Ahom dynasty of Assam. The Ahom kingdom ruled over parts of Assam and northeast India in medieval times, before it was toppled by the British regime. So the Ahoms, they had a unique burial practice, especially after they adopted Hinduism from 18th century onwards. Right? They started following Hindu burial practices, and they would essentially take the ashes and the bones that was left behind after a Hindu cremation and create a burial mound to pay tribute to the royals of the Ahom dynasty. So in many ways, it's similar to your Egyptian pyramids. Right? That's what the Egyptians did by building these earthen pyramids, to preserve the remnants of the royals, along with the precious commodities and the material which would be stored in the mounds as a way of paying reverence to the royal person who has passed away. So you find such burial mounds in many other civilizations and kingdoms and empires. In Bahrain, for example, under the Umayyad dynasty, similar burial mounds were created. You can find them even today, which is again a UNESCO World Heritage Site in Bahrain. Right? So like this, there are burial mounds present in many countries, and in India, we have these burial mounds at Charai Dio Moidams in Assam. So this cultural heritage site, the Charai Dio Moidams of Assam, which is a 700-year-old cultural heritage monument, it has been recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Is that clear? Now, you should understand something about UNESCO World Heritage List as well. See, under this program, there are 3 categories of sites which are recognized. Either a site with natural heritage, a site which has a lot of natural significance for the ecosystem, for the environment, which is rich in biodiversity. So such natural sites can be listed as a World Heritage Site. Or the site should have cultural significance. It should be of immense cultural value. And there is a third category called the mixed category, where a site could have both natural and cultural elements, and those sites are recognized as mixed cultural sites. Now the Chardio Moidams of Assam, the royal burial mounds of Assam, which have been listed, this is the first World Heritage Site from Northeast India under the cultural category. Is that clear? Please write down this point. It can be important for your prelims. This is the first World Heritage Site from Northeast India which is listed under the cultural category for its cultural heritage. In Assam, there are other World Heritage Sites, but they have been listed for natural heritage. For example, Kaziranga National Park, Manas National Park and Tiger Reserve. So these are World Heritage Sites as well, but they are under the natural category. Now, did you know there is only one mixed heritage site in India? Can you find out which is it? There is one World Heritage Site in India which is under the mixed category. Find out which is this World Heritage Site, where is it located, and mention that in the comment section. Now, coming to the next article, it's again related to art and culture. It's related to international relations as well. India and United States have signed an agreement for protection of culture, for protecting cultural assets and antiquities. India-US have signed the Cultural Property Agreement. Please make a note of this. Now, why is this agreement necessary? What is the purpose of the agreement? See, from several countries, such as India, cultural artifacts are stolen. Antique items, which are of immense cultural value. You can't even quantify their value. They are intangible as well. Such antiquities and artifacts are often stolen and they are smuggled into Western markets. This essentially refers to antique trafficking, which is a type of organized crime. It's an illegal activity. So, for example, from Indian temples, idols and precious artifacts have been stolen, right? Sometimes locals who are in collusion with smugglers and international trafficking rackets, they steal the artifacts and the antique items and smuggle them to Western countries where they are sold in auction houses. Sometimes they are sold illegally to collectors at a very heavy price. They fetch millions of dollars. Sometimes they are legalized by bringing them under auction houses, recognized auction houses, and essentially the illegal product turns into a legal antique item. So this is a significant loss of cultural heritage for countries like India. Not just India, many countries suffer from the same impact. So it is important for India to work with the United States to prevent the illegal trafficking, smuggling of artifacts and antique items, and also ensure that they are returned. This agreement, the Cultural Property Agreement, will help in tackling the smuggling and trafficking of antiquities. It will also help in returning these antique items back to the country of origin. So the US will be obligated to cooperate with countries like India to track down such illegal artifacts and antiquities and help the origin country to safely return those artifacts back to the home country. Coming to the last article, on page number 12, we have an update from Mexico. See, Mexico, I hope you know, is a hub of narco-terrorism. In fact, not just Mexico, even Central America and South America. Central American countries like Nicaragua, Guatemala, then Honduras, and South American countries like Peru, Ecuador, Colombia especially, they all have been hubs of drug production and drug trafficking. Now, why is this topic relevant for us? It is relevant because organized crime is a topic under internal security. Organized crime, wherever it flourishes, it is connected with money laundering. It is connected with terror financing. It is linked with other types of organized crime. Like drug trafficking will be connected with arms trafficking and other forms of illicit trafficking. So Mexico has been a hub of narco terror, and the US authorities have achieved a major success in cracking down on one of the most notorious drug cartels of Mexico. I'm sure many of you would be fans of web series like Narcos on Netflix and other documentaries as well regarding some of the drug cartels of Colombia and Mexico. Now, who hasn't heard about Pablo Escobar or the Cali cartel in Colombia, right? Similarly, in Mexico, there were few deadly cartels, and one of the most notorious, the most dominant drug cartel was the Sinaloa cartel. The Sinaloa cartel. So this drug cartel based out of Mexico, it was founded by a notorious drug criminal, El Chapo and El Mayo. Recently in 2017, the Drug Enforcement Agency of the US, the DEA, managed to arrest El Chapo, and right now he is serving a prison sentence in the United States. And according to this news report, El Mayo has also been arrested along with the son of El Chapo. This essentially takes down the Sinaloa cartel of Mexico, which has been the major headache for American authorities. Please look at this map. This map, sourced from World Economic Forum and the UN Office on Drugs and Crime, it depicts the major criminal hubs of the world, especially the drug production hubs and drug trafficking hubs. If you look at India, India is unfortunately surrounded by two major criminal hubs. One is the Golden Crescent. The Golden Crescent that includes Afghanistan, Pakistan and Iran, which is a hub of opium production. Today, other forms of drugs are also being produced in large quantities, including synthetic drugs. So the prevalence of drug production, drug trafficking in the Golden Crescent in many ways fuels terror financing in the region and arms trafficking in the region, which eventually affects India. And towards the east, we are bound by another similar region, the Golden Triangle. The Golden Triangle that covers Myanmar, Thailand, Laos, and today even Cambodia. So this region is again a hub of drug production, arms trafficking, wildlife trafficking, and Myanmar, Laos, Cambodia have even become hubs of cyber crimes and online gambling scandals. Most of the fraudulent messages, calls you're receiving off late, saying that you should invest in a crypto scheme, or the cyber crimes which are being carried out through WhatsApp and through other online social media platforms, most of it is originating from here. Many Indians have been trapped to work for these criminal cartels in Cambodia, Laos and Thailand. So these issues remain a major concern for India, right? So if you look at North America, Central America and South America, Mexico and Colombia have been the hubs of drug production and drug trafficking. So a few years ago, some of the Colombian cartels were taken down, including the Pablo Escobar cartel and the Cali cartel. And now the US has taken down the Sinaloa cartel headed by El Chapo and El Mayo. Is that clear? It is indeed a big development as far as the world of organized crime is concerned. Most of the drugs produced here in Mexico, Central America and South America, they are headed towards US and European market. They are the biggest consumers. So it's not just cocaine. There are other synthetic drugs, including fentanyl. There is a China connection here as well. And of late, fentanyl has become a major menace in the US. Several youth who are addicted to fentanyl are losing their lives because it's a deadly drug. And several criminal cartels here in Mexico are producing it with help from Chinese pharmaceutical companies. Chinese pharma companies produce the active ingredient required for production of fentanyl. China exports that to these countries and it falls into the hands of drug cartels, and they are producing fentanyl and trafficking this to US. This has increased drug addiction, drug-related deaths in US and across many other countries. So that is why the topic is relevant and very important for our exams. So on this note, I would like to conclude the discussion for today. I hope you guys have liked the session. If you did, please let me know in the comments, press the like button, and do join my Telegram channel for regular updates and notes based on current affairs. That is it for today. We'll see you tomorrow. Till then, take care. Have a good day. NCERT books are unavoidable to crack the IAS exam. Not only is the content of these books authentic, but these books also help a civil services aspirant to build conceptual clarity. And most importantly, Lots of questions in the civil services examination are directly asked from NCERT books. But the aspirants often find it difficult to cover these books, or worse, they even end up ignoring these books. We at Unacademy IAS English are going to make the reading and understanding of the NCERT books easier. We present NCERT Fundamentals course, a free initiative of Unacademy IAS English. What are the highlights of this program? Comprehensive coverage of the most relevant NCERT books for the civil services exam. Prelims and mains practice questions in each session to test your understanding of the fundamental concepts. This course begins from 12th of July every day at 6 p.m. right here on our YouTube channel. Subscribe to the channel now.